Have you ever been watching a show that was fascinating, but simultaneously an absolute train wreck? So much so that you couldn't tear your eyes away from it? I mean, talk about lions, tigers, and bears. Oh, crap. The Netflix documentary series Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness is just that. This documentary series follows self-proclaimed Tiger King, Joe Exotic. He is a dude who lives in Oklahoma who has a ton of lions and tigers and other big animals on his homemade zoo. This chronicles his struggles, his rise to fame, and even his fights with animal rights activists and other homemade zoos. There are 7 episodes of this, and it is a study in narcissism and megalomania, and that's not just on Joe's part. There are a ton of other players throughout the episodes that are just going to leave you scratching or shaking your head and saying, WTF. Joe is very charismatic in certain ways and then completely abrasive in others. And we get a really good insight into his life. I mean, he loves the spotlight, so he's willing to be there just all the time. And so there is a ton of footage and interviews with Joe Exotic. Now, he does have a rival in the big cat industry, and this one is more of somebody who runs a rescue. And I put that in quotes because as her story unfolds, we get to see that maybe she's not actually providing the sanctuary that she says she is. Or at the very least, she criticizes Joe for having animals in cages and then charging the public to come and see them. And that's exactly what she does at her sanctuary. So at the end of the documentary, I'm not really a fan of hers either. In fact, at the end of the documentary, there was one person out of all of the characters that I really kind of was okay with. It's fairly shocking and heartbreaking to see all of these animals all throughout the country where they're not really given the space to roam freely as they should out in the wild. The tagline for this documentary is the wildest story you'll never believe. And they're right. I mean, this is just a crazy freak show, and the things that go on truly defy belief. Now, the murder part of the title comes from Joe Exotic being accused of plotting the murder for one of his rivals, the one who runs the sanctuary. But that part of it, that's not where the mystery begins or ends. I mean, this whole thing is just intriguing all the way around, and you get to watch, and when I said it was a train wreck at the beginning, this really is a train wreck of people. I mean, you just watch and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that there are people like this and that they just keep unfolding and they keep coming out of the woodwork, and just these rich characters to see on screen. This is a roller coaster ride with Joe right at the center, and it's exactly where he wants to be. And that's why it kept me watching. At times I could be sympathetic to him, but at other times he's a downright lunatic. Either way though, he is the ringleader and the center attraction of this freak show of animal collecting. This documentary was shot over quite a bit of time, and I like that we have interviews from years. And so we get to really see progression of relationships, of events, and just how things play out. So I feel like we get a really good glimpse into what's going on. My only criticism would be that we end because we reach current time and there's still more to be told. So I hope that at some point there becomes a Tiger King 2 or the follow-up, or I don't know what you would call it, George of the Jungle for all I care. But I want to see more of this, and I want to see how the rest of it plays out. The real life characters in this are so rich, and the storytelling is really well done and very compelling. I do believe though that the documentary is a bit biased, and I think it's biased towards Joe. Now he again is the central character of this, but I really think that it's leaning more towards in favor of him than remaining a neutral participant and just observing everything and let us seeing everybody. I do feel there is a little bit of that, but for the most part I think it does lean towards Joe. Honestly, though, I would be surprised if you walked away from this documentary liking anybody that you saw on it, because they're just, well, they're not very likable. As I was watching this documentary, a lot of it reminded me of another Netflix documentary, Cocaine Island, and that had another crazy cast of real-life characters. They're just a train wreck to watch, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, I am just in utter belief as we're going episode to episode to episode, that it just gets more and more wild, more and more crazy. You see the characters, and I call them characters because they're caricatures of real people, but they are real people, and maybe they're blowing themselves up for the camera, but anyway, they are nuts. and they're fun to watch, even if I don't like any of them. I highly recommend that you check this one out and give it a try. It could be the most bizarre thing you've seen all month. There's no sex, there's a little brief nudity, a lot of violence and descriptions of violence, and then a ton of profanity. As I'm trying something new, I'm not giving actual ratings to documentaries anymore. I'm just going to tell you whether or not I think you should see them. I highly recommend Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness on Netflix. So would you get into a cage with a full-grown tiger? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.